Hello there, good evening indeed. He's hoping you had yourselves a great start to your week. And thank you for joining us this evening on Rwanda Television News. This is what we have coming up on our edition tonight. President Paul Kagame has attended the 2022 Effective Development Cooperation Summit in Geneva, Switzerland, and addressed the delegates. Congolese refugees living in the Kigeme camp in Rwanda have condemned the atrocities being committed against other Congolese nationals back at home and asked the international community not to stand by and watch it happen. We are glad to have your company tonight, joining you straight from the heart of Africa, Kigali. My name is Sam Kalisa. And as we kick off our edition tonight, let us inform you that President Paul Kagame attended the 2022 Effective Development Cooperation Summit in Geneva, Switzerland, and addressed the delegates. We do have the report with Serge Node.
The summit is designed to boost cooperation when it comes to effective development efforts, and President Paul Kagame emphasized the need for all leaders to commit to development and to be held accountable for shortcomings. The African leader told those gathered that there is no point in continuously reviewing past failures to implement agreed-upon objectives, and pointed out that the reasons why such failures keep occurring are what should be addressed so that change can occur moving forward.
But with some reports indicating that the cost of meeting the SDGs targets has increased by up to 25%, new ways of doing things, especially in mobilizing resources and partnerships, are needed. One area that requires special effort is better resource mobilization among recipients. For example, following a similar emphasis on agriculture, the African Union has made increased domestic financing for national health systems a priority and is tracking this on an annual basis.
His Excellency Paul Kagame also stressed the importance of follow-up to ascertain exactly how projects are implemented.
Development effectiveness is also about keeping track of progress, identifying gaps, and making adjustments where needed. In line with this, I welcome the new monitoring framework, which will include as an assessment of the private sector's engagement as a key player in the development cooperation.
He also reminded all present that the COVID-19 pandemic illustrated how global problems affect all, regardless of how wealthy a country may be, which is why international cooperation is so important. The summit is organized by the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation that brings together 161 countries and 56 organizations.
Rwandan parliamentarians have been elected to represent the country in the East African Legislative Assembly, have vowed to strive for what will help the entire East African community as a whole to develop. 5 out of the 9 elected are new members, with the rest returning to the second term.
I am very happy to have been re-elected, and I will return to complete the work I had started by finalizing pending bills, especially the East African Persons with Disabilities Bill 2022.
East African Persons with Disability Bill 2022.
There are many problems that do not recognize international borders, especially environmental issues like the climate change matters I had been working on. No country can address that problem on its own. All must cooperate for the sake of agricultural productivity and food security, as well as the environment in general and our natural resources.
Ni ukubakira ku byiza bagenzi bacu batubanjirije bagezeho.
We must build upon the achievements of our predecessors, be it Rwandans or others from other countries. As Rwandans, however, we must protect the interests of our own country. That has to be a priority.
The fact that there are many EALA female members helps other countries learn from our example and trigger change. We want gender equality to be promoted in other countries, as it was done in Rwanda. We are setting an example for others by going there.
When
you look at cross-border traders in this region, 60% are women. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries closed their borders. We know that there are many strategies in place to revive the economy in the region, but not all of them cater to the needs of female cross-border traders. As female parliamentarians in EALA, it is our responsibility to see that the needs of such people are considered, look at gender equality issues in different countries, but at the East African community level as well.
And as we move ahead to other matters, Congolese refugees living in the Kigeme camp in Rwanda have condemned the atrocities being committed against other Congolese nationals back home and asked the international community not to stand by and watch it happen.
The FDLR left this country after committing atrocities. Now they are doing the same thing back home, and they have forced us to flee here. Instead of doing advocacy so that we can return to our own country, everyone is quiet as they exterminate those that were left behind.
The Congolese refugees are housed at the Kigeme refugee camp in Nyamagabe district of Rwanda's southern province and say they are being persecuted back home in the DRC because they speak Kinyarwanda and are Tutsi.
Those left behind are going through hell. They are being killed in their homes and others are being kidnapped. None of them have any more rights, not over their lives or their property. They are being persecuted because of the way they were created. If it is a debt we owe them, they should say so that we can find a way to pay it back, and they leave us alone and stop persecuting us for the way we were created. I do not understand why the government of Congo would side with foreigners to persecute its own people. Why don't they tell them to return to their own country and leave us, the Congolese, to have security?
Their objective is to exterminate the Tutsi tribe. It is an ongoing genocide, even though it has not been called that yet. The signs are all there. Our relatives are being beheaded, others chopped up limb from limb. It is heartbreaking that the UN and organizations like Human Rights Watch are just watching and not saying anything. That is the reason we as refugees have decided to speak up. The Congolese refugees say Congo's armed forces, FARDC, and the terrorist group known as the FDLR are responsible for the insecurity in the eastern DRC. We are deeply saddened by this because they do not even know the root cause of the problem, which is the FDLR. Before that group went to Congo, during Mobutu's rule, there were no problems. After they went there, the Tutsi began to be hunted. That is the reason why we wonder why they focus on the M23 instead of the FDLR, when the latter is the biggest source of all these problems. They are killing us and our people. The refugees are asking the international community to stop overseeing what they are calling genocide and act accordingly. We are asking the international community to understand the true nature of the problem, even if the Congolese government won't. We are not happy to be here, living our lives as refugees in a camp. The UN and organizations like Amnesty International should call on the Congolese government to do what is right. Back home in Congo, I was a local leader, so I know what I am talking about when I say that the FDLR members are going about pretending to be regular Congolese citizens and causing all of these problems. It is just unfortunate that we had to come to such a developed country like Rwanda as refugees and not as Rwandans. Had we been Rwandans, we would not have been received as refugees, only to spend a decade of our lives living up on this hill in this refugee camp. That would have been impossible. The Kigeme refugee camp has been the home of more than 16,000 Congolese refugees for more than 10 years now. Similar peaceful demonstrations by Congolese refugees in other camps in Rwanda, such as the ones at Mahama and Mugombwa, are also planned to denounce the atrocities being committed in their home country.
After just 7 months of making payments on a bank loan that was supposed to be repaid in 2 years, Sibomana Theonest, who resides in Bugesera district, had his property auctioned off. According to the National Bank of Rwanda, the borrower's property should only be put up for auction if other attempts have all failed. We'd have the report with Olive Nete.
Sibomana Theonest, who resides in Nyamata sector, Bugesera district, received a loan from the Nyamata branch of the Vision Fund for 3.6 million in September of last year. With this cash, he purchased a motorcycle for cargo transportation. This resident said that in July last year, he delayed in paying due to the damages faced due to rainy seasons. But he did not lose heart because after 2 months he continued to pay as usual and was surprised to be told by the bank that his property was auctioned for 2.6 million.
We were due to complete the payment on the 1st of September 2023. They sold it on the 3rd of May. I didn't even know about it. I live in a house of 1 bedroom and a living room. That auctioned house has 7 rooms, a living room and 3 corridors.
Sibomana Theonest and his family of 3 children were evicted from their house in October of this 2022, and now they are living in a small house. He says that the origin of his problems may be the result of not accepting to meet with the employees of the bank outside the workplace because he thought that they needed bribes.
He told me to find time and discuss with him outside his workplace. In short, all of this happened because I did not do as requested.
Members of the parliament recently told the Central Bank of Rwanda that what is currently happening in the auction services is unfair and causes loss to people's property due to how it is devalued.
An auction is not buying with the bank. You bring the collateral and they give you a loan. Then you work and pay them and then get back your collateral. Failing to pay does not mean taking his collateral. That's not the business. It is something else.
John Gwangomga, the governor of Rwanda's central bank, notes that instead of rushing to sell the collateral, which results in losses for property owners and banks, those financial institutions should help borrowers and find out how they use their loans.
An auction should definitely be the last option. Banks can find other means like getting other collaterals from those people instead of doing otherwise. Most of the times, selling collaterals bankrupts the bank and the owner. So, there is still a long way to go.
Some residents find it problematic that auctions are now conducted using technology because they claim that nobody but those with an interest in the property, which is also undervalued, is informed of what is happening.
According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, knowing the precise number of people with non-communicable diseases would assist the continent to cope with these diseases because they are a threat to a population of Africa. Olimnete continues.
At Gihogo Health Center in Jari Sector, Gasao District, in the service that receives people with non-communicable diseases, people are checking up on their health status. Mukawunani Beatrice, who suffers from hypertension, says that she follows the doctor's advice for her health improvement. They prescribe medicine for me to use, and I use them appropriately. I'm here because I have run out of medication. They usually advise me to drink a lot of water, do sports, avoid alcohol, oil and salt. At this health center, 126 people with hypertension, diabetes and asthma are monitored on a regular basis, and those with severe conditions are sent to hospitals. Patients who are still young occasionally fail to follow family planning methods, and they may become pregnant while having diabetes. Patients with such instances are frequently sent to hospitals so that they can be cared for and give birth there, and then return to the health centers later. Others who have hypertension may develop diabetes. They may already be at the 3rd stage of the disease, and we are not allowed to monitor them. They are sent back to the hospital for additional monitoring and then brought back to the health centers once they are stable. From the 13th to the 15th of this month, Rwanda will host the second conference on public health on the African continent, which will be attended by more than 3,000 people. According to the Minister of Health, Dr. Sabin Sanzimana, non-communicable diseases as an issue of concern to the continent is one of the topics to be discussed in the conference. Dealing with these non-communicable diseases requires a change in attitude and practice.
Non-communicable diseases are really presenting as a serious challenge globally, but particularly in Africa, where more than half of mortality are actually coming from non-communicable diseases. We are seeing that through cardiovascular diseases, cancer. These are examples of leading causes of mortality in Africa and in Rwanda as well. And this shift is happening as we've spent almost the last 2 decades combating communicable diseases, infectious diseases, HIV, TB, malaria. But non-communicable diseases are taking over. We need to do regular checkups. Solutions should not always come from far. We have solutions nearby. So that is the main thing we'll be looking into this conference.
The Acting Director General of Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Ahmed Ogwel Uma, notes that knowing the real numbers of people with non-communicable diseases will assist the African continent to deal with them.
One thing that has been missing in the conversation for NCDs on the continent is prioritization. We have data that is collected but not made available quickly. We get data analyzed 3 years later. And this hampers the way in which we respond. What actually our countries need to do is also to prioritize NCDs and then resource the programs in an appropriate way. And you can only do that if you have good data. And that's why we have begun from the point of, can we collect the right data? Can we be able to analyze so that we know what our burden is? A small example I will give is Senegal. During COVID, Senegal did a platform where they asked all those who had comorbidities, and these are largely NCDs, register on the platform so that we prioritize you to get vaccinated. The numbers were very different from what was known to be the NCDs burden in Senegal. So if you go out and look for the numbers, you find that the burden is much larger than we know.
According to the Africa CDC, all the 55 African nations will be represented at this conference on public health in Africa. This demonstrates how highly these nations respect the well-being of their citizens. It is a conference that will be attended by experts in the health sector, researchers, and private international organizations working in this sector. Olive Nete, RTV News.
Thank you, Olive, for the report, and we'll keep it to health matters. About 1.5 million women need to be screened for cervical cancer nationwide. So far, only 30% of them have access to screening, as the goal is to avail these services to health centers so that this disease that kills many mothers can be prevented. We do have more.
1.5 million women need to be screened for cervical cancer nationwide. In Rwanda, the disease accounts for 12.6% of cancers recorded and accounts for 13.7% of all cancer deaths. The nurse in charge of examining cervical cancer at the Gihogwe Health Center, Solange Nkurikinka, confirms that it is becoming more apparent.
Among 100 screened, at least 12 are cervical cancer positive. Maybe it's even because those who come for screening are still few, but at least 10% of those screened are found positive.
The participants of the second International Conference on Public Health in Africa believe that this cancer kills more than 300,000 people every year, and more than 600,000 people get infected. The Minister of State in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Iva Butera, noted that the government of Rwanda has put forward measures to deal with this disease, among which includes extending the service of diagnosis to health centers.
Since 2020, we have introduced HPV DNA testing and integrated it into our primary healthcare. And this comes to complement the visual inspection with acetic acid that has been going on for quite some time in the country and that has been scaled down up to the level of the health centers to ensure quite early access for the wide community. The treatment of precancerous lesions has also been decentralized to the level of primary health care. And equipment also have been decentralized to primary health care. And as a result of this, we've been able to provide treatments to 87% of women with precancerous lesions in need of that treatment.
Dr. Grosbeck-Parham, speaker at the conference, stressed the need for increased cooperation in dealing with cervical cancer.
So we need to, again, move faster, bigger, and better. And the program needs more resources, better advocacy, and now it has to sort of move away from so many meetings and convenings and those kind of things and guidelines that WHO has done and focus more on implementation. There's a need for a global fund for cervical cancer. WHO needs to support these goodwill ambassadors, one of which is the Henrietta Lacks family. HIV, cervical cancer screening should be fully integrated into HIV care. The single-dose HPV vaccine, if supported by SAGE, should be something that's explored. One other thing that we need to think about in terms of population-based screening is having mass cervical cancer screening camps and large cervical camps to treat large numbers of women instead of just waiting for women to trickle into these classic Western-type clinics.
In order to prevent cervical cancer, starting from the age of 12, approximately 1.3 million girls have been fully vaccinated against cervical cancer between 2011 and 2021.
And from this, we sum up our tonight's edition on behalf of the entire news production as well as the technical team that made it happen. Thank you for being with us on this edition of Rwanda Television News. We wish you a great and fruitful week ahead. Goodbye.